Hey everybody, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth. And as always, with some ideas and insights, what to really pay attention to when you are working on scaling your business to either the 7 or 8 figure next level. So, if you're like most business owners, you can't afford throwing a whole bunch of Google money at top talent. So what that means is you have to love the ones that you got and help them get to the highest level that they can perform at so that they can help you take this and scale it right now. So when you're thinking about what that may be, you may be thinking, I've already tried everything. I've already done everything. I've done all the stuff. Now, the question is, have you really? Because we all may think we have, but there's really a good 10 things that are not rocket science. They are not some new fandangled thing, but what they are is incredibly good foundational must-dos that you cannot be without as a leader. So as a small business owner, you can't afford missing a single one of the 10 things that I'm going to talk about today. You may think 10 things sounds like a lot, but these are really quite literal, the most important practices when you are guiding a group of people that you need to have perform like a fine-tuned machine of leaders who are creating leaders at every level, who are performing as high performers at every level. So no matter if they're your top executives or if they're at the bottom of the heap, if they're the most junior employee, it doesn't matter. This is how everybody has to think. So even if you miss one thing on this list, it could cost you an incredible amount of productivity. So we want to really be very, very intentional about this. And it starts with the most simple of all simple things that everybody should have dialed in, and it is shocking and amazing how many people do not. So having really clear goals, and not just mediocre goals, but clear, big, hairy, audacious goals, clear BHAGs. So when you think about what that means is you may be setting reasonable goals. You may be setting goals that when you're thinking about by what percentage have you increased every year. So you may be setting realistic goals like that. But what you really want to be setting here are really clear stretch goals. Because when you set stretch goals, it forces your existing team to get out of their comfort zones. So I've seen this over and over again, especially with teams that are well established, that have been around for a while, that are used to doing things as they always have. They get used to operating a certain way, and they get used to pushing a certain amount. So if they're used to just operating at that quote unquote realistic level, it's time to put a little fire under their butts and get them thinking a little differently. And they can. Everybody has that extra gear. We just have to tap into this. So setting really clear BHAGs that are stretch goals that force your team out of your comfort zone is number one. Number two is, of course, once you do that, you have to hold people accountable, and you have to have really good checks and balances in place that you follow up on regularly that help everybody understand, am I actually hitting these goals or am I not? So that's really where people need to look at their goals every single week. So when you build a plan with somebody, you have to have that one-on-one with them every single week. So we call it the one-on-one once a week, so that you and them can really get clear about how they're doing, how successful they're being at what you are requesting of them. So we have to hold people accountable, and we have to provide the checks and balances so that they can really understand if they're being successful. Now, that means giving them feedback, that means coaching them, that means giving them support, and also challenging them to push themselves just a little bit harder. This is not about creating unreasonable stress. This is not about asking people what they cannot do. But what I just said earlier is everybody has a little bit extra left. Everybody has another gear, but it's uncomfortable to tap into it, so most don't. So you have to come in and shake things up a little and ask just a little bit more. You know, it kind of reminds me of I was watching the Kentucky Derby this Saturday when it was. And the winning jockey, beautiful guy, really beautiful heart, he was talking about how he knew exactly when to ask the horse to just give a little more. He knew exactly when it had more left. And that's pretty much exactly the same thing that we have to do with our teams. We have to know what they've got left in the tank, and then we have to ask for that, because unless we do, they won't deliver it. So now that we have done that, we have set really clear goals, we are holding them accountable. Next thing is we have to provide autonomy and authority for them to actually do this stuff, because we can't ask more and then micromanage the heck out of them while they try to achieve that. So we have to ask them, we have to give them autonomy and authority. And because when you think about that, when you're controlling at a high level, when you're micromanaging, you're disempowering people from actually putting their heart into things and being strategic and thinking of their own solution, which means they're not bringing their own talent to the table, but they're being limited by yours. Because hopefully you've hired people who are better at what they do than you are. So that means you have to allow them to bring that talent to the table. You have to allow them to operate differently than you would, so that we have a next level result. Okay? So we have to give them the autonomy over key decisions. So when they make a plan, they commit to a plan, we have to give them the autonomy over the key decisions, and we have them to give them the authority to manage people and budgets so that they can achieve their goals. So for many of you, that might just be a huge trigger when I'm saying we have to give them the authority to manage people and budgets so that they can achieve their goals. But think about this, when you're asking somebody to step up, when you're asking them to think more strategically, to bring more, to think of new solutions, to disrupt what you're doing, because this is what we're trying to do here, then you also have to be willing to give and invest so that they can do that. So when it's new to somebody, you might ask that they get approval, or that their leader is kind of looking over that after they propose the budget, until you can trust them to actually run with this on their own. But you have to give them a new level of authority over this. And then you have to trust them that they can actually achieve this. So you have to trust that they can, because otherwise this is never going to be a good equation. So a little bit of guidance in the beginning so that you can build that trust with them is great. A little bit of coaching, a little bit of support, but you have to pretty quickly back off when you realize they actually got this. They might be doing it differently than you are. It might actually be costing you more on the front end than if you had handled this with your old solution. But the whole point of this is that we're challenging for higher performance, better solutions, quicker delivery, whatever it is that will push the needle. So we have to give them that autonomy and that authority. And then every single person on your team has to have a growth plan in place so that they get the coaching, that they can get specific improvement in place. So you have to be specific with people what you want them to improve. When you're looking at somebody and you realize they have more gas left in the tank, they could do better, you have to coach them, empower them, and give them the support that they need so that they can step up. So very, very important. So that means you might have to get them some training. You might have to get them a mentor if that's not you. You have to help them stretch and give them the resources that they can do that. So they need the resources for you to level up their performance. Again, this is when you want a higher level result, you might have to put in higher level investment even in your existing people to help them push the needle. So we want to make sure that they can stretch for higher performance. And then the other thing you have to do, we're at number 5 here, you have to recalibrate your KPIs. So often, I just talked to somebody yesterday who was telling me, our team is doing great, we're doing so well, we have already achieved our goals for Q3 or something like that. I can't remember what the exact thing was, but it's like they were far ahead of the goals that they set. Now, to me, that means they didn't set their goals high enough. So that's what I mean when I'm saying recalibrate your KPIs. Really look at, if it's too easy, then we have to up those KPIs so that we can achieve higher performance. So too easy, you'll recognize pretty quickly, because that means you're either on track or you've already outperformed the KPIs that you're setting. So we have to recalibrate them, and we have to measure and recalibrate for growth and performance. So that means we have to measure to create higher value. So really important, when you're asking for better KPIs, you have to look at what's the highest value that could be creating, what would make the boat go faster, what would get us more growth. And then we also have to recalibrate for strategic priorities. When you think about it, even when you have a good plan, you're working several strategies at the same time. And as those strategies kick in, you'll see one pulling ahead of the other. So now we have to come in, recalibrate the plan, recalibrate the KPIs, look at what's achieving us the most value and what's the most strategic, what's creating the highest growth or the highest value over time, so that we cannot lose sight of this, so that we have to push this forward. So very, very important, recalibrating your KPIs. And then the next thing that everybody has to pay attention to is that as you're growing people, you want to challenge them to bring strategies to you, not just plain results. Results are great, but they're short-sighted generally. So we want to help people start thinking strategically instead of just short outcome directed. So this means you have to ask your leaders for an outline of a plan for how they're going to get to their goals, so that they have to bring the strategy to the table. They have to achieve their methods and their metrics. They have to think strategically, and they're planning for higher performance, and so that they can become higher performance level leaders. So when you're talking to any of your directs, you want to talk to them about, hey, so this is what you're already doing. You're bringing good results to the table, but what's your plan? What's your strategy here for getting this to the next level? So again, we want to challenge people not to just do what they're told or look what's in front of them. We want to have them think in terms of improvement, disruption, doing things differently, so that we can keep pushing those higher level results. So, and then the next thing is, when you're doing all that, that means now people are in high gear. They're getting dialed in. They're focusing on strategic. They're handling higher level work. So that means you have to redistribute workload, because now you have people who are showing up at a higher level, and you're going to see some people just can't. They have outperformed. They have hit their limit. They can't do more. So now it's time to recognize the high performers and start shedding things off their plates, so they can focus on the more value driven, on the higher level results, on the more strategic results, right? So that means any of you who've listened to me before, check out, I've had several podcasts about the domino effect, which really means getting people 100% dialed into their sweet zone, where they can produce the highest level results. So you want to look at this, and for any of your high performers, you want to look at their plate and only get on there what their sweet spot is, what their highest performance is, what they do best, what they love best doing, and what's driving the highest and most valuable level results for your company. So that means everything else, any busy work, any admin, anything else that somebody else could be doing, should come off their plate. So now we have to start that shell game of shifting things around, where, the people who can't show up at that level, they get more of the kind of lower level work to distributed to them. And the people who are stepping up, who are leaning in, who are delivering at a higher level, we need to free them up to do more of that, because that's the only way we can really level up the performance. So when you're thinking about, when you have a highly performing team, the last thing you want is for people to be too overwhelmed, because that means they can't produce results. That means they will be distracted. That means they're stressed beyond what's actually positive. So we have to free them up for delivering the valuable and the strategic stuff. So start thinking about, your high performers. How can you redistribute their workload so that they can be focused on the most important stuff? And then one of my favorites is challenge assumptions, because chances are there are a lot of processes, strategies, mindset that have been around for a long time and that have not really been challenged or questioned in a long time. So we want to keep looking at, what are we actually doing? What's working? What are we just accepting? What do we already know is not working, but we've been too busy, too overwhelmed, too lazy, or whatever it is to do something about it? Chances are it's just at the bottom of your list. But when you're looking at it truthfully, a lot of these old strategies, processes, assumptions, or mindset could be getting in your way of getting higher performance. So you want to provoke new perspectives. You want to challenge assumptions. You want to question the way we're doing things, so that you can allow people to plan and perform for a higher impact. That should be the question all the way through. How can you produce a higher impact for the company, for our customers, for community, for the world, whatever it is that you're going for? You want to challenge people to think for a higher impact. So we want to challenge those assumptions. We want to do things differently from what we're used to doing, because the status quo, doing things the way we've always done it, I promise you, is costing you a ton of performance right now. So making really sure you challenge assumptions. And then my favorite is, one of my other favorites is, share the why with them. When you're asking more of people, you have to give them the reasons for the goals, for the strategies, for what you're striving for, so that you can drive their commitment. If they don't understand the reasons for why you're asking this, chances are they'll push for a little while because you asked them to, and then they don't have the commitment, they don't have the persistence to keep going. You have to give them a purpose. You have to help them reach their own purpose behind the strategy, behind the performance, so they will keep standing behind it. So we have to give them the ambition. We have to give them the reason behind the ambition, so that they can increase their motivation. And when you're asking somebody to deliver high-level results or higher-level results, when you're challenging them to get out of their comfort zone, that also means they have to be more motivated, and particularly more inspired to keep showing up like that, because it's not easy. People don't like change. When they're doing this for you and for the company and for themselves, they need to know why. And when you're doing all this, the last thing that is really important is recognize and reward achievement. It's so easy when something is suddenly working better. It's like this headache that suddenly left and you forgot that you had it. So it's really easy to just kind of go along with that and not really say anything about it. And the people who are pushing hard, who are working hard, who are showing up differently, they're going to become disenfranchised. They're going to become disappointed. And that means their performance is going to decline. So you want to celebrate the wins. It's not about their ego. It's not about, quite often I hear, well, that's their job. They shouldn't need more. But when somebody's going above and beyond, simply celebrating their wins, celebrating their achievements, celebrating the energy they're putting behind this, is going to get you huge results, because that immediately hits one of those really important human needs of significance and impact. So everybody wants to know my contribution matters, what I do matters, but significance is I matter. I'm being seen, I'm being heard. So significance and contribution are two very important human needs. And when you celebrate somebody's wins, they feel like they're being seen, heard, they're being valued for who they are, especially when you do this publicly. So when we really see people go out of their way and go above and beyond, you want to celebrate this with the entire team, because the other nice little thing that this is doing is setting up a little bit of competition, because when people see other people being celebrated, they want that same thing. They want to be celebrated. They want to get acknowledgement. So this is also setting up a little bit of healthy competition. So this reinforces the high performance. And what we're really saying here is this is a person who has been achieving, who is performing at a higher level than the norm. And this is what we all need to do to win together. So very, very important. And the next part that goes with that is you want to tie your compensation and your incentives to goals achieved. So we're not talking about, this is one of the funniest things that I hear all the time when people tell me that, oh, I'm going to start an incentive program, I'm going to give people bonuses, I'm going to do profit sharing, but simply for doing the job at the level that is the norm. And that's something that I want to discourage anybody even thinking about it, because that is rewarding people for mediocrity. That's not what we're going for. We're going for excellence here. So when people are pushing, going above and beyond, getting out of their comfort zones, doing things they don't know how, they're risking failure. They're risking all sorts of scary things. They're doing this. Tying rewards to that is a really good idea. So you want to look at when people really produce something extra for you, you're going to share the wealth that that creates. So tie your compensation and your incentives to goals achieved so that you can really drive sustained progress. Because when you're rewarding for people, whether, then that doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be, for one thing, their recognition. You're rewarding them with that. For another thing, they're getting attention from you, the boss, the owner, which is also really firing up that human need for significance and being seen. It could be that you're giving them more flexibility, more autonomy, even more responsibility. That's all being rewarded for achievements. Somebody is who's hungry, getting more responsibility, working at a higher level, that's amazing food. And of course, everybody likes a little bit of extra money, so you can create an incentive program that makes sense to both parties, that makes sense for you because you achieved more, you received more. So that also means that you can share the wealth that created. So this is really, when we talk about challenging your existing teams to step up and perform at a higher level, it's very important. The key to this whole thing is to strike a balance between the challenge that you're creating for them, the challenge to do more, and also the support that you have to give them to make that possible. So they know that when you're challenging them, when they need you, when they need support, when they need coaching, when they need mentoring, even when they're scared, when they're disencouraged, you're there for them. You have their back. They trust that they can go out on a limb for you and even make mistakes, and you'll have their back. Because if they don't know that, if they don't understand that, they will not. And that means you have a team of complacent people who are not even near tapping into the talent that they have. So you want to make sure that you support them, that you give them what they need so that they can succeed as high performers that they are and that you want them to be. So I hope this was really helpful. We have a brand new training out there that addresses all this in detail. So if you want to see more, go to bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com/leap, and check out what we have for you there. So have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.